welcome to another episode of Am I Really Gonna Do This Writing Thing with Stacy Carroll. No, I'm kidding. I haven't really titled these writing tutorials, but today's topic is how to tell if you have a plot that will draw readers in. And this is specifically, maybe you've written a couple of books and they've been flops, or you haven't liked the reviews, or you're just not doing as well as you thought you'd do. After all, everyone knows that after you write your first book, everybody's supposed to buy it and you're going to cha-ching to the bank. But overnight success is not happening for you, and you're super frustrated. I understand. My overnight success is, that was 2018. I really started hitting the publishing cards. So 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 8 years. Yeah, my overnight success is 8 years and counting. So, how to tell if you have a plot that will draw readers in after you've written a few flops. So, you've written a few books. Maybe they didn't take off like you'd hoped. Reviews trickled in, but sales were underwhelming and reader engagement really fell pretty flat. Okay, it happens to the best of us. It really, really does. So, if you've sold a couple of books, like literally you have sold more than 0 books, you are a success. Okay? It is that hard to sell books. If you have sold one book to somebody that isn't your family member or friends, okay, you're a success. And even then, for some of us, if you sold one to a family member and that was all you sold, you're still a success. I tell you, man. Alright, so, you're not a failure. And if you've got quite a few sales and quite a few reviews, what you have is data. And by quite a few, I mean like 100 or 200 over the course of however many books you've written. So every book that you write will teach you something. Okay, something. But the question is, do you know what it taught you and do you know what to do with it? Well, here's the deal. You're here right now asking one of the most important questions you could ever ask as an author. How do I know that my plot is actually good? And how do I know that it will hook readers? Okay. As an intermediate writer, someone who has written a book, finished a book, and published a book, you are past the basics of someone who needs to know structure and syntax. What you need now is insight. Nuance that separates an okay story from one that grabs readers by the collar. So, here is my tutorial on how to assess your plot through a reader-focused lens. Let's take a deep dive, folks. So first of all, start with the core question. Core question. Why are you writing the story that you're writing right now? Why are you doing it? What is your motivation for doing it? You've thought of a plot, obviously, or you wouldn't be here. You've thought of a plot. You've started writing the story, right? You started putting something down on paper. And now you're wondering, man, I've written, a book. I've written 2 books. I've written 3 books, and they're just not doing well. Is it my plot? Well, here's the deal. Why did you... Now, let's not look at the past. Let's look at the present. Why are you writing the plot that you're writing right now? What's your motivation? Okay? A compelling plot usually answers a burning question. And that burning question is, why this plot right now? Ask yourself, what tension is baked into the premise of my plot. And I can give you an example. Because your premise should pretty much be your plot. So we'll start with my bitey vampire books. A tiny bitey vampire from outer space. Okay. The plot's baked into the title. What do we have here? Bitey vampires. And we have a little bitey vampire. And the plot is that they're escaping their home planet because there's no food on it. They're starving to death. So what's the tension in that premise? The tension is if they don't get off the planet, they're going to starve to death. Okay? Does your premise, the whole point of your plot, does it have a tension point like that? Once you figure that, you need to say, what personal or societal relevance does my plot hold? What does your plot mean to you? And what does your plot mean to society? And when I think about this, I think of all those doomsday, end of the world scenarios, like an asteroid's gonna hit Earth, or there's a big volcano explosion. You know, it doesn't have to be that big. You know, it can be a little thing. Like your character needs to get a job yesterday, or they got big problems, right? There's your tension. There's your relevance. You know, and then you think about, well, you know, how does it affect society? How does that matter? And it matters because everybody needs a job. They need a job to make money, pay their rent, pay these overpriced bills that we're doing, that kind of thing. I saw a good movie the other day. It's called The Beekeeper. The Beekeeper. And it's about a guy who is a beekeeper, but he's also some super secret, you know, agency dude that is retired. And his next door neighbor gets scammed. And she subsequently decides to permanently check out because the scammers got all of her money. And the beekeeper finds her. He's bringing her over a jar of honey. And he finds her in her chair, and he finds a weapon on the ground. And he gets a little angry about it. And he starts looking for these scammers. And all through the movie, he is just wrecking scammer call centers all day long. And it's got some more tension in that, but basically, you know, how does, you know, what's the tension point? Well, the dude's a beekeeper and everybody in his neighborhood is the hive, right? So, and then, you know, he's willing to do what it takes to protect his hive. And in this instance, it is to go after these scammers. Now, how is that relevant for today's audience? Well, we got scammers everywhere, and they don't always know that they're scammers, I feel like. I feel like sometimes these companies will hire for a job and they don't tell you that they're scamming people. Although you should pick up on the clues. If your company wants payment via gift card, you're probably working for a scammer. So, anyway, so that's why it's relevant. I mean, a vigilante going crazy on some scammer call centers, that's relevant to today. The third question here is, when you think about your plot, you think about your premise, and you think about your pitch, also think about what people are doing. This is a cell phone. Okay? If you're going to pitch to somebody, what about your pitch is going to make them go, what? Could you say that again? Tell me that plot again. And they put their phone down, folks. When they put their phone down, you have their attention. And I got a funny story for you. Let me see if I can find one. I need a clicky pen. Let me find a clicky pen. Alright, so I found my clicky pen. So, I was sitting in a lecture at a college Oh, 2010, 15 years ago. I was about to embark on my freelance writer novelist journey, and I found a couple of community courses at a college that if I took them, they would accept me into the creative writing program master's program. Well, turns out they lied about the latter part of it, but I still took these classes, and one day the goal of the class was to pitch a novel idea. Whatever novel you're working on, pitch the class the idea. And they're just blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And I've got my pen, and I'm doing this. Let me show you what I'm doing. I don't even know that I'm doing it. I don't even realize that I'm doing it. But I'm really irking the crap out of the teacher. And I'm doing this. And I don't stop doing this as I'm listening. And all of a sudden the guy goes, I jumped to grab the ball from the basket before it went in, and my balls fell out of my shorts. I stopped clicking the pen. He said, I went to knock the ball from getting in the basket. I'm clicking, 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 and my balls, he had my attention, folks, fell out of my shorts. Okay? That's what you want to do. Okay? What about your premise is going to make somebody stop scrolling their phone? What about your pitch is going to make them stop clicking that pen? And the teacher actually brought it up. I did not realize I was doing it. And he realized that I realized I didn't know I was doing it. Because I was listening to him. But I'm obviously very, very bored. This guy does not have my attention. And I'm just clicking that pen. And I'm driving the professor nuts. He's sitting right next to me. And he realized the minute I stopped clicking my pen was when the speaker had my attention. And he actually brought it up in class. He said, all right, I want to point something out. Did you realize that Stacy was clicking her pen all the way through your spiel until you got to the part where you said your balls fell out of your boxers? There's your pitch. He said, there's your pitch right there. I want to tell you a story about the time my balls fell out of my boxers. There you go. That's the pitch. Instead, he had this whole long diatribe in front of it. It was probably 3 or 4 minutes. And he said, you need to cut it back to, I want to tell you the story about the time my balls fell out of my boxers. So yeah. You know, what's going to make somebody stop doing whatever they're doing and turn around and look you in the face and be like, tell me more. Number 2, examine your hook. And this is kind of what I just got into. Is your hook intriguing? Not just interesting. A good plot doesn't just sound nice. It teases a deeper mystery, contradiction, or twist that demands a resolution. Pitch. Let me give you a test here. Pitch your plot in 1 sentence. Now, what do you think a stranger would say? Would they say, oh? Or would they go, oh, well, tell me more? Oh, I feel like I've read this movie before or watched it. All right, so here's a weak hook. A woman inherits a bookstore and finds love. Sounds like a Hallmark movie to me. Hallmark could buy that, but it's cute, not gripping. Okay, if you're not going to sell it to Hallmark, you need something else. A stronger hook might be a woman inherits a failing bookstore, only to discover her late grandfather may have left clues in the margins that point to a 30-year unsolved murder. Or a treasure. I like treasure stories lately. A lot of my, if you go back about, I don't know, 10 or 15 shorts videos, you'll come up with a bunch of pirate and treasure stuffs. Those are good. So that's much better. Think about that. If you're going to pitch your book to somebody, a random person, do you think they would be like, yeah, right, kid? Or would they be like, hey, you got something there? Number 3, character-driven conflict equals reader investment. Character-driven. I only write character-driven books, okay? They're not plot-centric books. They're character-driven, not plot-driven. And here's why. You need to make sure your characters are interesting. If your characters are boring or formulaic, you're not going to get very many readers because they don't care about your character. Character-driven stories make readers care about your characters. They want to know what happens next to these characters. You know, we went through a phase where everything was action, action, action. It was so jam-packed and so tight that there was no room for any character development. And there are lots of books and movies out there that are like this. We're getting away from it, thankfully. Because here's the deal. A good story isn't 300 pages of heart attack material. A good story is paced. You have an action sequence, you develop some characters. You have an action sequence, you develop the characters. You have an action sequence, you develop the characters. It does not need to be action, 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 action. Plus, you need to give your readers time to breathe. You know, it's nice being on the edge of your seat, but my God, let them lean back every once in a while. Readers don't just want action, they want emotionally driven action and emotionally relevant characters. Ask yourself, does your protagonist want something badly or very badly? Are the obstacles personal, painful, or escalating? Think about your obstacles. Your obstacles are challenges that your character must face. Okay? That would be, and it could be something small like a broken pencil. Okay? And then it gets bigger. It gets bigger. You know, one things I saw that really made a lot of sense was, in this one class that I did, was you can have your character walk through a door, but you want to get your people ready for what's on the other side of that door. So, do they trip over the rug? Do they trip over a chair? How do we get things going so that you know that something on the other side of that door is unpleasant? Build the action. Build the action. Then, you have to ask yourself, does the character's choices have actual quantifiable consequences? You know, if your character does not get on the airplane to go wherever they're going to go, what are the consequences of that action? Obviously, they don't get to where they're going, but how does that matter? If they don't get on the airplane, how does it matter with the rest of the story? What happens? And then what happens if they do get on the airplane? Which one is full of more tension? Which one has more plot? Good plots don't just throw characters into chaos. They reveal who the characters are through the chaos. The more internal conflict intersects with external stakes, the deeper the reader investment. There's your takeaway. 4. Does your plot sag or snowball? Does your plot sag or snowball? If we're talking about sagging, you know, your plot dips. But if it snowballs, it's getting bigger, right? The more you roll the snow up to make a snowman, the bigger a snowball gets. Ideally, as you climb up to your climax, you want a snowball. Then as you start resolving things, you want to dip down, right? So the reason this is brought up is because many stories start strong and lose steam So here's how to check if the middle of your story is solid. Does each plot point raise the stakes or change the game? Are any secrets being revealed, alliances shifting, or pressure building? Is any of that happening? Is there a midpoint twist or a moment of emotional reckoning? In other words, did you nail your climax? Did you nail your climax? A flat plot often keeps characters moving but not evolving. Your midpoint should force a choice or revelation that kicks everything into a higher gear and starts the resolution process. Right? Your characters make a choice, come to a realization, and boom, you're going to slide into the end of that story and wrap up everything as you go along. Okay. Now, what about so what's the freshness factor of your plot? Do you have are you doing a familiar trope, something that's been written 1,000 times, or do you have a surprising execution? How are you making this thing yours? How is this plot yours? And I want to point out, as I say, I feel like I say this every video, you can't write something that hasn't already been written. It's already been written. The only thing you can do is bring your voice into it and give it a fresh take. Like one of the couple of the best vampire movies I've seen lately is Dracula. I believe it's Dracula Untold. Very good. And what's the other one? Now I lost it. But Dracula Untold tells Dracula's story from a pretty different perspective. It's still realistic. You can still see Dracula doing this. But it's a different perspective. Right? So, how is your story different than everything else that's been written? And the answer is going to come down to your approach to the story and your author voice. Ask yourself, how is my execution of this story unexpected? Am I subverting any reader assumptions? Am I subverting any reader assumptions? Does the plot push genre boundaries or blend them in new ways? Ideally, you want to do this because your plot's already been done. You need to make it yours. A good plot takes what we know and twists it just enough to spark somebody's curiosity. Number 6, get some beta readers. When you get a couple of your drafts under your belt and done, get some beta readers. These guys are the reality check that you're going to need to check your plot. Because here's the deal. As the author, you can say, I think I've got a good plot. But your opinion, only matters so much as that it keeps you motivated to write it. The true test of your plot and of your book comes from your readers. Only your readers can tell you how your book is. So get a couple beta readers. Get quite a few. And try and give them specific prompts to think about when they're reading your book. Did anything in the book confuse you? What was confusing? When did you feel most hooked in the book? Where did your attention falter? And did you feel that the ending was true to the book? And that's really what you're striving for as an author. You want your ending to be true to the book. When you review what your beta readers said, did anything stand out? Did some of them say a couple of them say the same thing? Because here's the deal. It's all about people's opinion. So you can dismiss it or give it credit, but it earns more credit when more than one person says the same thing. All right, number 7. Plot isn't just about what happens. It's why your readers care. It's why you care as an author. So you might have some exciting events, escapes, betrayals, twists, but the plot is the thought line that makes Those moments matter. So to test this, fill in the blanks. My story is about a character who wants a goal, but when inciting incident happens, they must struggle, or else the stakes along the way, they discover the truth. Okay? Let's try that again. My story is about a character who wants a goal, but when the inciting incident happens, they must struggle, or else some stakes will happen and they'll lose something, and along the way they discover the truth or the theme or the meaning of life. If you can't fill in the blanks, you don't have a good plot. And you need to refine it. Here's the deal. Just because the plot you love isn't right, it doesn't mean you can't refine it. You can take a plot and rework it until it works. So the truth is, a good plot isn't about being clever. It's about being clear with your story. It's about being honest with your readers. It's about being true to your book. So it's not just structure, it's a promise. It's a promise of tension, change, and resolution. If your plot is emotionally charged, driven by character, desire, or consequence, rich with forward momentum, and anchored in a compelling why now kind of way, then you've got something worth writing about, right? You've got a good plot. If you hit all those marks, your plot is good to go. Happy writing! So don't think about my other books were flops. What's done is done. Your books are published. The only book that matters now is the one you're working on right now. And if that plot hits these marks, you're good to go. And I want to wish you happy writing. If it doesn't hit these marks, you can rework your plot until it does. Right? You can always change things. But anyway, folks, that's this tutorial. Happy writing. And if you like this video, please like and subscribe. And I will talk to you later.